Good morning and welcome to our Automotive 30% Club Inspiring Easy event to celebrate International Women's Day and the theme Choose to Challenge. I'm also going to launch my book, which is called Change the Game, the Leader's Route Map to a Winning Gender Balanced Business. So it would help if everybody keeps their cameras off and their audio muted, just to preserve bandwidth, but also to ensure that our speakers can be heard well. We actually have over 50 participants already joining us today, so it will certainly help if everybody can do that. So later, you're going to have the chance to chat in breakout groups, and you'll hear from our panel of very inspiring women, and they're going to talk about what women can do to help themselves in their careers, but also to help others. But first, I'm pleased to welcome Erin Baker, award-winning automotive journalist, and she's going to ask me about the book. So please, Erin, can you join me on screen?
I think I'm there. I feel like I'm here. Am I here? Good. You'd think a year into this, we'd all be sorted, wouldn't you? Right. Well, thank you very much. And congratulations, Julia. First of all, great book. I'm going to actually start by just delving into the introduction. I was having a read through the other night and I was really grabbed by this sentence. We usually overestimate what we can achieve in the short term and underestimate what we can achieve in the longer term. Now, it seems to me like you've achieved in the short and the longer term, but to kind of, to take your achievements today and just take a step back, actually. And I think we all know you in the context of today, but not all of us know about your background and what brought you to this point, because, you know, the title of this book, Change the Game, is a hugely bold statement, and that's got to be backed up by a bold personality. So what's your background that kind of led you to where you are today?
Well, I suppose if we start a long time ago, I was bitten by the bug of the automotive industry when I was about 8 years old. So my father actually ran a home servicing business. And so I would help him answer the telephone, to take bookings, and in the holidays I'd go out and do the service check sheet for him. So later in life, when I went to university and Perry's Motor Group came along to look for graduate trainees, it seemed an obvious choice for me to join the motor trade. I didn't see that there was anything, you know, with regards to women working in the automotive industry. And so that was really where I started out. I was very lucky in that the dealership that I worked in Perry's Motor Sales, was actually pretty gender balanced for the time. It was based in Doncaster. It was in the early 90s. And yeah, we had female sales manager, we had a service reception manager. Quite a few of the management were women. And so it was not till some time later that I discovered that that actually wasn't the norm. And so in terms of going back to the question about changing the game, when I started, I didn't feel that there was much of a need to change it. It was only later on, having moved on through my career in Ford and worked in Germany and Spain, and came back to the UK in around you know, the mid-2000s, to find that there seemed to be very few women working in the sector, and that not much had progressed since that I was working there in the 90s. So it was at that point that I decided that somebody had to do something about it.
And this is quite a kind of personal question, I guess, but one that might affect a huge number of us listening on this call. You know, I'm like you, I'm a woman in automotive and have been vast majority of my career, but it's not just I found people in the workplace as well, but friends and family. Did you get, when people say to you around a dinner table, back in the days when we could all get together around a dinner table, you know, what do you do for a living? And you say, well, I work in the automotive industry. Did you kind of, from friends and family, go, oh, that's a bit odd, isn't it?
Well, my family didn't, obviously, because they were connected to the sector. But yeah, I have to say, friends, particularly as a graduate joining the sector, was, you know, it certainly wasn't something that they would have considered doing. But interestingly enough, I then became the bridge, if you like, for quite a few of my friends to walk across to join automotive. So you know, Nicola, that works in our team today, she joined automotive shortly afterwards, and so did another one of our friends. So I think sometimes it is just about making it known to people that in fact the jobs in the sector are fun. You know, they can be very enjoyable. There's a huge variety. There is a you know, something in there that can enable you to progress quickly if you are a high performing individual, and I think that's something that we need to share more out there.
Yeah, because we talk, don't we, about kind of building internal pipelines and we'll come back onto founding the Automotive 30% Club in a minute, but we talk about kind of what we do internally to lift and so on, but it's as much, isn't it, about, as you say, providing that bridge, reaching out the handshake to people, women outside of automotive, and saying, actually, there are great careers in automotive, come into the industry, you know, come in, the water's fine.
Yeah, and I think it's if more of us did that, you know, I think it would create another kind of talent pool that we can tap into.
Yeah. So you came back and in 2000s and actually the landscape had changed a bit, or more people were asking questions, or it just felt like, God, where had all the women gone? Why was it just suddenly apparently more men? Was it that? And you thought, okay, now's the time to kind of step up gear a bit and do something more?
Well, at that point, I'd started to teach on the university degree programs at Loughborough University, automotive executive programs that I'd actually helped to establish when I was working in Ford in the 90s. And it struck me that there were still no women coming on the programs to take leadership development. So I decided to explore that a bit more. At that point, I was looking after my children. I wasn't working in a corporate environment anymore, or in the, you know, deeply within the sector. But I got in touch with some of my old peers from Ford Motor Company that were now in senior roles in across the UK. So the managing director of Volkswagen Group and the president of Toyota and president of Kia were all people that I worked with at Ford. And I spoke to them and said, so why haven't things changed? And their response was very much, well, they hadn't really noticed that there was an issue, or that there was, if you like, there was an opportunity that was being missed. And so they all agreed to join the club at that stage but I said, look, I will take responsibility for making this happen, because nobody kind of within one of the companies could do that. And they knew me personally, that I would deliver on something like this, you know, that if I was that passionate about achieving the goal, that it would happen. And the thing that I would say with regards to the theme of International Women's Day in terms of choose to challenge, this was really what I decided we had to challenge this as a situation, as the status quo. We can't just accept it and kind of passively let nothing happen. And also I was told by some people when I started out that the only way I could achieve this would be to ask permission. And it would be to ask permission of the SMMT or the IMI or the NFGA, and to be making sure they were on board. And I just made the decision not to do that, mainly because I'm just the kind of person that never asks for permission to do anything that I believe is right. But also I thought, well, if they were going to really do something about this, they would have already done it. So it's clearly not high on their agenda yet. So I just thought, no, I'm going to set up a completely separate entity that does not have any, if you like, obligations to any of the institutions that are already here. And work with the leaders of the sector directly to try and achieve the change.
It's quite hard, isn't it? Because with most movements like this, most movements for change, you've got to get to the point where you reach critical mass, haven't you? And then you get the momentum behind you and it starts to flow and become easier. And so often with these things, the first days and the first months or years even can be the hardest to kind of get people on board, get the momentum shifting. And I think it can be quite tricky for women in those circumstances in particular, because, you know, with a woman pushing and, you know, chasing up on emails, chasing up on phone calls or for meetings, women can be labelled of, oh, she's nagging again, you know, there's that blimmin' annoying woman. Whereas men, men aren't often accused of nagging or kind of. Did you get much kind of worse than pushback? Did you get much kind of apathy in the early days, and was it hard to get the momentum going?
I would say it was mixed, really. So obviously in the early days, I went round asking people if they were going to support and if they wanted to join the club. And I would get a mixed response. You know, some of them was like just very polite, but you know, maybe this is not our thing, or we're not really into women's equality, we're more into diversity, which was a strange response from some of them. But I have to say the majority seemed to, in some respects, feel relieved that somebody was going to take on the task and create something that everyone could jump onto, and sort of create this collaborative framework for this. So, I mean, I did have, the only negative response I had was from somebody that, you know, a senior manager that was extremely aggressive and very rude to me in a public forum. Which shocked me, you know, in terms of why he would feel that he had to be so aggressive and so opposed to what I was doing. But luckily, there were quite a few witnesses to that who then said, you know, this is a reflection now of him and not you. And
yeah.
So,
I kind of often think that I'd rather take rudeness than apathy. Apathy is the harder thing to overcome sometimes, isn't it? Yeah. Moving on slightly to the timing of the book coming out and the last 12 months that we've had, and, you know, what a year for everyone, what a year for automotive. You know, we've had the pandemic, we've got Brexit, we've got electrification, we've got all these challenges facing automotive. And I think, you know, the response given the past 12 months, often when people and corporations and individuals and workplaces are faced with difficult political, social and financial times, the tendency is to kind of consolidate, to pull up the drawbridge, to say, well, we don't want to be bold and brave at this particular moment in time. There's too much at stake. We don't know what the landscape looks like ahead. There's too much uncertainty. So that Choose to Challenge, you know, International Women's Day and Change the Game, your book, is all about, now is the time, it's always the time to take the next step and to look around and be bold and brave. But it would be easy during this point, wouldn't it, to kind of consolidate and for companies to say, oh, now's not the time.
And actually, I've been amazed and really pleased that hasn't happened. So although, you know, in March, when everything looked very uncertain and people were being furloughed and the country seemed to shut down totally, you know, obviously everything went rather quiet at that stage. But from the point of coming back after that, in some respects, there seems to be even more energy being allocated to this, because my message has always been that this is employing more women and bringing their talents and skills and their complementary characteristics to a business makes a business more successful. So when you are looking to transform your business to become a 21st century high-performing team, you need to have this gender balance. And luckily, you know, the leaders of the sector are beginning to realise that and are now putting quite a lot of energy, resource and budget into hiring more women and retaining the women. And also, most importantly, they are recalibrating the environment to make sure that women will thrive. Because it's one thing saying let's hire more women, but the most important thing is, well, how will the environment accommodate that, and how will the processes and policies that are linked to an organization that have been designed around the white men for 100 years be adapted to suit a much broader type of employee? And that's what they're doing now.
Great. Well, I'm being whispered at quietly digitally, say our time is up already on this part of it. So over to you.
Great, thank you very much, Erin. That was it's quite fun being on the other side of the of the conversation. So we're now going to move on to welcome our panel. And they're a panel of very amazing, inspiring women, I think, from our sector. So they're now going to reveal themselves virtually, and in a moment they will unmute themselves. So I'm going to, I will name the people as they arrive. So I can see we have Katie Saunders from JCT 600. We have Elaine Cole from Virtu. We have Lee Lafeva Ayer from Enterprise. We've got Sharon Ashcroft from Trustford, Rachel Shepherd from Toyota, Hannah Litt from Motorpoint. And I think I've covered everybody, haven't I? We have, so it's a very large panel, and it'll be great to hear everybody's views. And we don't have a lot of time, but hopefully everyone will get their voice in. So our conversation is really about what women can do for themselves and for others. So we know that men are largely in the positions of power and need to drive the change from the top, but women must also play their part in building inclusive teams, and women must have the same high aspirations and expectations of success as male peers. They should also inspire others to progress, and as Madeleine Albright, the first ever female US Secretary of State, famously said, there's a special place in hell for women who don't help other women. And I fully agree with that. So there are many ways that women can help to achieve the gender balance. So let's discuss what women can do. So I'm going to turn first to Lee. So there's a commonly held belief that women lack confidence, and this isn't actually true. It's just that relative to most men, they appear less confident, and women don't lack it, but men have an overabundance. And that is back to time and again in various studies. And men are more likely to go for opportunities than women. So Lee, is this your experience, and how can women go for it?
Great question. First of all, congratulations on your book. It's so exciting. And second, you used my favorite quote. That's my favorite quote, Madeleine Albright. I actually have that somewhere in my office, which I haven't seen in a year. But anyway, I think we've all seen the research that, IBM put out, that when a job is posted, men will look at it and say, oh, I meet 60%, but a woman will look at it and say, oh, I need to be at 100% to throw for it. And so I think that we have to really, as women, sometimes don't look at it being 100%. Sometimes one of the most impactful things I've heard from a female CEO of a large corporation is 85% is good enough. Just go for it, just do it. And sometimes question the process. If you see a role that's posted and you're not quite sure it's for you, talk to people. Sometimes we don't reach out to our networks and talk. So do that. I mean, one thing I hear a lot internally as we're trying to get more diverse groups in the interview process is I'll talk to some of our men and I'll ask about women, and they'll say, she's not quite ready. She needs a little bit more time. And so one thing that I've tried to actively question is, well, why does she need more time? We all know that women, and there's some research here too, are judged on their performance, but men, sometimes people look at their potential. So I think we always have to sell our potential and not just the here and now and look to the future. And I think as leaders, we have to help other people along the way see that. And, I think women are just as confident as men, but sometimes their confidence comes across differently. So if a man is really confident, they're viewed as influential. If a woman is confident, she's usually viewed as something that may start with, she's bossy or something like that. They're viewed as influential, when people see them as, their confidence is helping other people or motivating other people. So there's a little bit of backlash there if women are confident. And sometimes women don't go for roles because they don't want to deal with the backlash. It's not about the confidence. And so I think that, we have to, not really worry so much about the backlash. And two, I think we have to, it's about fixing the culture sometimes. It's not about fixing the women. So I just think we have to go for it, get out of our comfort zone, say yes to projects that help us grow. And, finally, one of the most, I think, stories that resonates with me I've heard on this topic is from Michelle Obama. And in her book, she talks about, you know, going and sitting at powerful tables. And when you look at Michelle Obama today, she sat at some of the most powerful tables at the world. And she said, you know, once you get to those tables, people aren't as smart as you think they are. You're just as smart, you're just as good. And, you know, don't, you know, put that self-doubt away. So just go for it.
Right, thanks, Lee. And you know, really important. Yes, women don't need fixing. It is the environment, the male-dominated environment, that needs to be fixed to make our powers shine. If you know what I mean. So linking on to that point, I'd like to ask Katie, you know, about focusing on successes and not flaws. So women are raised to be aware of dangers and to be risk averse, and a heightened fear of failure could also be a manifestation of perfectionism. And I think we should stop trying to correct our flaws and focus on our successes. So Katie, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's absolutely right. And I think it is that many women have that inherent fear of failure. But I think that Lee made the more important point about that, which is that somehow it's seen as socially unacceptable for a woman to talk openly about what she's really great at. And that seems to be frowned upon by women and men. And I've never quite understood why that is, because I think I really admire women that can talk about what they are good at. And one thing that's stayed with me for years was being the subject of an exec coaching session, a super coach that I was piloting for the Volkswagen Group many years ago. And as part of the session, she made me stand up at a flip chart and write down on the flip chart all the things that I'm good at, all my strengths, and wouldn't let me sit down until that huge piece of paper, A3 piece of paper, was full. And it was the most excruciating exercise over 2 hours that I have ever done in my life. And I can remember it really clearly today. It was like extracting teeth. And I've taken from that when I've always had females in my team, always. And I'm very careful. I think it's really important to be very specific with the women that you are managing and influencing about what it actually is that they are great at, and have them acknowledge that, and then press repeat. So I think for me, that's one of the tactics that I have used for years and years to actually build that self-confidence and actually make it okay for a woman to talk about her strengths.
Thanks, Katie. So, and I'm now going to build on that point even further by bringing Hannah in about this importance about knowing your true worth. So we know that the combination of men and women working together is far more powerful than men working on their own. All the evidence shows that. Unfortunately, most women don't realise how valuable this makes them and understand their true worth. So Hannah, is this your experience, and that women need to be more aware of the value to the company that they bring due to the diversity of perspectives that they bring?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I think for us in the business, in the roles that we're in, and I don't think it's just the responsibility of women. I think we have to take into consideration lived-in experiences. I mean, if I talk about mine, I've been in the motor industry for 3 years now. We've got a great culture at Motorpoint, but before that I was in the construction industry. I'm a woman of colour with 2 hidden disabilities, and when I was there I was 8 stone heavier. I was really good at my job, however, without even realising, chipping away, being spoken to the way I was, over the 2 years I was there, my self-worth, without even realising, was chipped away day by day by day. I've managed to build that up now, being in a great culture. So there is a responsibility of men and women, whoever is in the business, to provide women, men, everyone in that business with the environment to actually know their self-worth, for us to pick up on people that may not have the self-worth, that they know their true worth, to be able to build that. Whether it be life experiences, and be able to talk about the life experiences, because every single person has true worth. people may not know it, they may not be able to talk about it, but be able to talk about lived in experiences, whether it's in work, outside of work, because everybody has it. Women have it. I was reading an article that actually outside of work, women almost operate like project managers outside of work. So everybody has that true worth, you know, even if it is you're at work, you remember you've got to order the shopping, you've got to do, so they're operating like project managers outside of work. Everybody has that true worth. Women have that true worth. It's whether we can help them to recognise that they have it if they don't recognise it, and give them the environment and the culture to do that. So yeah, absolutely, it's giving people the environment to, if they can't see it themselves sometimes, or need to build that up.
Thanks, Hannah. Some great points there. And it is really, you know, there's lots of evidence that shows that companies basically make more money when they have diverse women in their companies, particularly in decision-making roles, because of the breadth of life experience and the, you know, the complementary characteristics and skills that they bring. So somebody that knows her true worth, I think, is Erin. And I'd like to talk to you about, you know, we observe how successful people like yourself have taken control over how others see them and what they want to be known for. So I think you have successfully built your personal brand as an award-winning motor trade journalist. How important is it, and how do you do it?
Oh, crikey. Well, first of all, I was just very, very lucky because I spent 15 years as a journalist on a national newspaper. So I was gifted a platform. They kind of built my personal brand for me. All I had to do was turn up for work every day. And I realized not many women, and certainly not many women on this call, have that opportunity. But I got divorced in 2014 and I was suddenly a single mum with a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old. And I had to go freelance, and I left that safety net of a national newspaper and kind of had to start again. And I was thinking about this question the other day, and it's taken me 6-7 years to realize that actually what happened was I looked at not what my strengths were, but what my weaknesses were, and thought, how can I'm too knackered to try and gain any more strength. How can I maximize my weaknesses? And that's really what happened, because I'd been motoring editor of the Daily Telegraph, and I really knew very little about cars. And so I thought, well, actually, most people don't know very much about cars, and who caters out there for the average consumer who doesn't know what the hell oversteer is or adaptive suspension or anything. So sometimes it's about not recognizing your strengths, but recognizing your weaknesses and where you can apply those, because we can't all apply positive thinking every day to kind of, or get involved in loads of training to better ourselves. Sometimes we're just who we are, and there should still be a place for us, and there should still be development for us and the chance to succeed for us. We're all good enough as we are to a certain degree. Yes, it's great if you can add to your skill sets, but we've all got a skill set. We're all valuable in this industry. And so sometimes I think just take a look at yourself in the round when it comes to building your personal brand, and don't be afraid to say, well, this might be a weakness for you, but actually it's a strength over here, and this is how I can benefit this part of the industry or whatever. That would be point number one. And my second thing, I think, since I've gone freelance, I'm now on TV and radio quite a lot, talking as a consumer expert in automotive. Now, my first radio appearance 4 years ago or 5 years ago on Radio 4 or Radio 2, can't remember, was terrifying. I didn't sleep for 3 nights beforehand. I couldn't speak to my children. I was dry mouthed. I mean, this was for 3 seconds on radio, which everyone promptly forgot about. Who cares? But nowadays, I can rabbit on for ages on radio. They have to shut me up. So it's about just continuing to be really do something each day that scares you, but don't worry if it continues to scare you. You don't have to get over the fear. You can live with the fear. You can continue to be scared. I always say to my children, bravery is not about overcoming the fear, it's about working with the fear. And so that's my 2 things really. Don't be afraid of your weaknesses, and don't be afraid of fear. You can work with them both quite well, actually.
And I think really, with regards to the way that you're framing it as weaknesses, I think what you were doing there was looking for a differentiation for the brand. You know, how could you actually stand out? And that is such a critical thing when you're looking at developing your personal brand. It's so, what are you going to be known for that will make you stand out versus everybody else? And if there is an unexplored niche, then go for it and be that person with that ability. And so thanks, Erin. So we're now going to talk about how we can help other women. So I'm going to turn to Elaine. Now, we need women for jobs, even though no woman has actually been appointed to that role before. So Elaine, as a commercial director, what would you say to women who might see it as daunting to aspire to roles that are historically have only been done by men?
What I would say is be brave and do it. Go for it. I was appointed in the shoes of a gentleman who went on to be our chief operating officer. And when I was given the promotion to commercial director, people within the business actually said to me, "How did you get that job?" And it was said like that. Now I would think it would be outrageous if anyone said that to me. It was really quite shocking that a woman would get that job. And I started making excuses. And also excuses to myself, really. And then just one day I suddenly thought, I've got as much right to this job as anybody who's gone before me. And I think it was just, it's about not listening to that, not listening to people who may say, well, who does she think she is? Or, and I've worked in automotive for over 30 years and I've experienced quite a bit of it. But you just have to block that out. Just be brave, block it out. You're good enough to do that job. And we've talked a lot about, and Erin, you said, you know, you didn't sleep for 3 nights before the radio interview and whatever else. Your peers and the guys, some of them would be exactly the same. So just it's kind of like feeling the fear and do it anyway. But I think kind of a bit of advice for girls coming through and for young women coming through is start letting your boss know, other people in the company, that you want that position. So when you have your performance appraisals, I'm aiming to get onto the board, say things like that. You know, what do I need to do? Where do I need to go? What skills do I need? What other experience do I need? And start researching it, ask people in those positions, ask people who work with them, but really, and start networking. Now, actually, Julia, you mentioned about networking in your book, and there's some really good little hints and tips in there. Networking doesn't come naturally to a lot of people. But do gain as much information as you can. And perhaps the scary people like the CEO or whatever may not be as scary. Talk to them, ask to have some time in their diary. So really just, I think, really be brave and don't think you can't do it, because just because there isn't a woman in that position doesn't mean that you can't be the first one.
Great, thanks so much, Elaine. There's so much shoved into a very short space of time there. So I think all of you are what I call real models. So these are women doing fantastic jobs, you know, high performing, but you're real. You're not role model, because role model makes you sound totally perfect, and of course nobody's perfect. So we know that we must make our wonderful high performing women, such as yourselves, more visible to other women, because if you can see it, you can be it. So I'm going to turn to Sharon now and ask you, how important do you think real models are?
Absolutely vital. And it's about, you know, we talk lift as we rise. It's about reaching down, helping, pull people up. You know, going back to what Elaine said around, you know, within your organisation, just because there isn't a female in that role doesn't mean to say you can't go for it. With Interest Forward, we've just set up our Leading Ladies group. And again, that's just to encourage, you know, females within our industry, within our group, to be looking up, you know, do they need a mentor? Sometimes just give them that, you know, push to go for it. And by them looking at real models within automotive, they can see that they can get there, but they may have to just need someone to help steer them in that way, and someone to look up to and go, well, they did it, so I can do it. So it's absolutely vitally important, and that those real models as well, Julia, may not be necessarily in the organisation that you work in. And the networking, there will be someone, if, you know, talking about Elaine, who, you know, is really enjoying working in CV or fleet, want to get there. So reach out to Elaine. What did you do to get there? So that is what I would say around as, yeah, really, really encouraging people by, you know, some of us are looking up to the positions we're in. Let's help other females, you know, let's mentor them, let's lean in, let's help and pull them through. Kind of what I would say, Julia.
Yes, let's, definitely. Thanks, Sharon. And so you mentioned actually, Sharon, lifting others as we rise. So I'm going to turn to Rachel. In the 30% Club, you know that we encourage women to help the careers of other women. And so how can we lift others as we rise?
Thank you, Julia. I think this is a really important thing for us to be conscious about. And I think it's about being conscious about that we can do this at any level. Because sometimes it's about that reinforcement to each other, that little comment, that little piece of feedback that you've seen one of your peers do. So I think, you know, your Inspiring Awards do that for women. And we've found in our own organisation that women being able to nominate other women and then sharing the reasons why they think those women are great are all great positive reinforcements that help lift women's lives. From, I suppose, a more kind of organisational perspective, I think there's opportunities to help women in terms of kind of coaching and mentoring, and that's a role I play in our organisation. And I suppose kind of picking up on the things that other people have talked about, I'm always really conscious maybe in my coaching sessions, the language that women might use about themselves. So it might be, I just work part-time, as opposed to, wow, look what you achieved in 3 days. So I think there's also something about just the little things, about thinking about maybe the limiting language we're using about ourselves. Again, I'm also kind of conscious, we talked about women really knowing and identifying their own strengths. And again, in coaching, I find myself saying to women, so you're telling me what someone else thinks about you. Put that in a sentence where I know I'm great. So actually, again, that consciousness of the language and owning it for themselves. I think also within Toyota, and I'm sure many other organisations have done this, we've encouraged our senior women to talk to women in the organisation, and they've been beautifully honest about that. And I think what's really helped in that situation is that people have realised that you don't always have to have a really well laid out career plan. That's okay. Sometimes it's just about creating the opportunities and knowing what you're good at. I think also there's, and we talked about demystifying roles, helping people realise, you know, what a role really entails and therefore why they're going to be good at, and encouraging them to apply. And again, going back to all that little stuff, taking the opportunity when you've been in a room with another woman and they've done a great presentation, give them some great feedback, let them understand what went well, help them, you know, build in the moment. It's really important too. I think within Toyota, we run a program called Women on the Verge, and this has been sort of significant in helping women kind of change the conversation about themselves and make some choices. But what I really love about that program is the participants have chosen to create their own networks and to continue to support each other. And I think, again, this is really important to recognise we can all play a role, whatever level, in terms of supporting each other.
Very wise words, Rachel. Thank you very much. So we're actually out of time, I'm afraid. We haven't managed to get all our questions through, but one of the topics we were going to talk about was about being an advocate. So maybe we can, our panel members can share that in the group, in the breakout group. So thanks so much to Erin, Hannah, Lee, Rachel, Katie, Elaine and Sharon. Welcome back, everybody. I hope everybody's back in the main room now. I really enjoyed that conversation that I had with my group. I hope that you all did as well. And I hope that you've enjoyed this launch party and International Women's Day celebration. And thank you for all of you for the interest that you've shown in my book, Change the Game. I'd like to share with you the fact that I've negotiated, because obviously I'm a salesperson in background, I've negotiated a special discount with the publisher for the electronic version, and it will be available for only 99p on Kindle on Monday, but between 12 and 1. So that short slot, if you want a electronic version, it can be used on laptops and PCs and phones. It's not just Kindle. You need to go in and order it at that time, please, between 12 and 1. So let's do all that we can to change the game in automotive and make our workplaces an environment where women will thrive. We must choose to challenge the male-dominated status quo, because businesses that aren't gender balanced are really settling for less success. But we must also challenge and raise our own aspirations. We must seize opportunities, be confident of our abilities, and lift other women as we rise. And in doing so, we will leave a positive, lasting legacy that's good for our society as well. and for our sons and our daughters. So what would be really nice is if we could now all switch on our cameras so that we can see everyone who participated today. So even if you're in your pajamas, let's see everybody. Wow, that's really nice to see an amazing collage of people in all sorts of front rooms and office spaces, and it's really nice to be able to see you all. So thank you very much for joining, and I hope that you'll join us again if we have future discussions like this. Thank you very much to my panel and particularly Erin for interviewing me. And I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. And I'd just like to say goodbye. So maybe if we could all have a nice wave goodbye. Choose to challenge and change the game. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Julia.